Jen Saska. And I'm Sylvia Saska. And we're the Saska Sisters. And this is Indie Horror Junkie. Indie Horror Junkie.
Indie Horror Junkie.
Indie Horror Junkie.
Indie Horror Junkie.
Indie Horror Junkie.
Indie Horror Junkie.
Indie Horror Junkie.
We're a panic attack.
Indie Horror Junkie.
Indie Horror Junkies.
Indie Horror Junkie. Indie Horror Junkie.
It's the Indie Horror Junkie Podcast, your source for anything and everything indie horror. Here's your host, Otis B. Dreads.
Hello there, junkies. And no, I'm not Otis. You're not seeing anything weird. Basically, Otis is on a table read right now and may be joining us later in the show. And Asylum Amy is on assignment, believe it or not. So you've got just me, Rotting Ricky D here. And I am extremely ecstatic to welcome our special guest that we've got going on tonight, which is J.R. Bookwalter. We will chat with him about all things indie horror, his projects, his processes, distribution, some issues that we've all got with film festivals and with just the film scene as overall. So let's definitely make sure that we tune in and get your notepads out. And if you guys have any questions, definitely hit us up on the chat here, and we'll be chatting everything we can and try and get you as much information about everything that he does, all the things he's got going on, and any of your indie filmmaking needs. Hopefully we'll get some answers for you. All right, in the meantime, real quick, before we bring him up, let's do some quick housekeeping. We don't have a lot going on right now, but I do have a couple things I want to make sure you're aware of. The brand new issue, which is issue number 10 of the magazine, actually comes out this Saturday, the 13th. I've got it already printed. It's on its way from the printer. They will be available in our 2 brick and mortar places right now, which are Viper Video. And we've also got a pack that we'll be sending out to Nightmare Toys in Las Vegas. So they'll have them. And then we'll also have them available on the website for you to download either the digital version, or you can download the actual full printed copy from us in glorious color. And we're really excited about that because we've chatted up about a bunch of different little films that are getting ready to come out. Either they're in process, they're doing some funding right now, or they're getting ready to come out on DVD, Blu-ray, whatever the case may be. But we want to make sure that you know what's going on, where they are, a little bit about them, and how you can get your hands on it. Okay, that's for the magazine. We also have our Indie Horror Junkie Film Fest, the second annual, that is coming up in February. It'll be held at MegaCon Orlando, as it was last year, which is will be me, Amy, Otis, and 250,000 of our closest friends. So definitely come out there because it was an incredible time last year. We'll have a whole lineup of films. We'll have some special guests. We'll have all our merch out there. You can pick up magazines, back issues, T-shirts, pins, all kinds of stuff, and you can say hello to the junkies and help us spread the word of indie horror everywhere that we go. We also have the filming for Nightmare Collection Volume 3, which is going to be coming up, as a matter of fact, in 2 weeks. And then we're going to be actually premiering it on October 26th at our Mistress Mary Film Festival. That's going to be held over at the Cinema 6 Theater in Port Richey on October 26th, which is a Saturday. We're going to have a whole day of short and feature-length horror films, including the premiere of the Nightmare Collection Volume 3. We're going to have some vendors out there. We're going to have some actors, actresses, filmmakers, make it a nice networking opportunity, pictures, the whole bit, and giveaways as well. So make sure you mark your calendars for that. Check our website. We'll have all the details up there for you as well. And then we'll go from there. All right. Now, for our guests, so we don't waste any more time. I've known JR for quite a few years, mainly through Facebook, but I've met him at a couple of events as well. I followed along where he's his films He's worked a lot of some of my dear friends like Bring Stevens as well on several different projects. He's got a new film right now called Side Effects May Vary that we actually premiered at our film festival last year. And he'll tell you where you can see it upcoming and where you'll be able to get your hands on it after that. And then, like I said, we'll get into his whole process of filmmaking, his distribution strategies, and also some of the pet peeves that are bugging not just him, but pretty much everybody as far as film festivals go, as far as the state of filmmaking in general. So we'll definitely get into all that. So without further ado, before we bring him on, as we always do, we're going to show you a trailer. This is the trailer for his film, which is called Side Effects May Vary. So definitely take a look at that. And as soon as that's done, we'll have JR on here for you and we'll go to work. Enjoy.
We've all struggled through this horrifying pandemic, but like all struggles, there is eventually light in the form of Dissolvinex.
How's that husband of yours?
Oh, Glenn, he's actually pretty sick right now.
Did he get the vaccine?
Yeah, he's a little bullheaded about that.
The only reason I'm even here is to get Janelle off my back.
There is a new vaccine. It's called Alpha 21, and it doesn't have any side effects.
And it's safe?
So they say.
I had some concerns about the vaccine that you gave me.
You're burning me!
Why is this happening?
But a citywide manhunt is underway for resident Glenn Rollins in connection with these attacks.
So you think Glenn is just walking the streets of Ridgeway with a bucket of napalm melting anybody he runs into?
Well, no reason why they should have all the fun.
All right. How are you, JR?
Good. How are you, Rick? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. That movie was a lot of fun. Lots of how much blood did you use in that movie, blood and gore?
I'm told by the makeup effects artist that we used 10 gallons of blood slime.
I was going to say, because
counting fake blood, but that was blood slime that we were using in a lot of those cases. So.
I did see a lot of that spread around, so I'm always a big fan of that kind of stuff. So that's great.
Absolutely.
All right. So why don't you first off start us off by giving the audience a little background on you and where you guys started and pretty much what you got going on right now.
Well, I've a million years ago, I made a movie called The Dead Next Door, Super 8 zombie movie that was legendarily financed by a Hollywood bigwig who wasn't a Hollywood bigwig at the time, later became a Hollywood bigwig. And basically that just led to a several decade odyssey of making movies like Robot Ninja and Ozone and Polymorph and a number of other things over the years, shooting on basically every format known to man. I've shot a 35 millimeter movie for Full Moon called Witch House 2 Blood Coven. I've shot on Super VHS-C. I've shot on Mini DV. Of course, most of these formats, people are going, well, what are those? We've never heard of those. The younger crowd probably doesn't know what any of that stuff is. But back in the day, kids, we shot on tapes. And you had to put them in a machine and play them.
I remember those days.
So I Side Effects May Vary was the first thing I've done in 20 plus years. I kind of reached a point towards the end of my 5-year tenure with Full Moon where I just sort of decided to walk away from it for a while, and it wound up being longer than I necessarily anticipated doing it. But Side Effects has sort of brought me back into the fold, so to speak, only to find that the business is as rotten as it ever was. maybe worse now, because we used to have distributors. The worst that could happen is you get ripped off by a distributor. Now you're lucky to find a distributor at all. Yeah. Let alone one who will rip you off. So
yeah, I've seen there's been a lot of. Obviously it's been changing for quite some time, but like you said, as far back as I can remember, there's always been issues like this. But I think that especially since COVID and coming back from COVID, it just seems like there used to be minimum guarantees out there for some filmmakers and such like that, but now it's like you don't see anything like that unless you've got name talent or something like that. Nobody's going to see anything like that.
Well, that's it. And I think especially in the what you would call indie horror world, I mean, that means a lot of things for us, for you and I, that probably means, and a lot of the people watching this probably means movies that you're making for, $10,000 if you're lucky, or or a little bit, maybe if you're lucky, a little bit more than that. But the problem now is we have all these mid-tier horror movies that are sort of taking all the oxygen out of the room, because that's what everybody's going to see. Movies like Maxine and things like that are sort of, that's where the market is, really. And if you're not making one of those kind of movies, you're just white noise, essentially, to quote I don't know what movie that's from, Spinal Tap, one of those movies.
Yeah, something like that. And there's so many distributors now. There weren't that many before, but now it's like, I mean, everywhere you look, you could, throw a rock and hit 10 of them, So, I mean, and then it varies as far as what they're going to be able to do for you. But the main thing is that they're locking up these movies for 5 to 7 years and claiming they're going to put them out on all these different streaming services and stuff. And the money's just going to come rolling in. And the actual chances that you're going to see any money at all is slim to none. So it's really hard pressed to try and find those distributors that might, give you a fair shake and do something good for you, whatever it is, and you might actually see some money. So,
well, that's the thing. They don't really exist anymore. And even in my own dealings as a distributor with my Tempe company and MakeFlix, I mean, I've picked up some movies here and there, and some of them made money, and a lot of them have not, just because the market's just not there, or they didn't, catch on or whatever. But it's tough you're in a tough position, because it's if you offer anybody upfront money, then you got to get that money back and then try to make them some money on top of that. And I just know so many filmmakers who, are just on the receiving end of a raw deal. Essentially, they get nothing up front. The movie doesn't do anything, and they've just completely wasted that window of opportunity to that first strike advantage to get your movie out there. And the bigger problem too is also, as viewers, we've sort of are geared more now to sitting and waiting for things to come on streaming. I know I saw that we recently, as part of our epic theatrical roadshow for Side Effects May Vary, of which your festival was part of back in February, we went to 35 different cities and even Canada and Germany, trying to show this movie. And we had turnouts. There were definitely people there who were into this stuff, but unfortunately we got the diehards on one side, and we got on the other side, we got people who kind of wandered in off the street and didn't really know what they were in for. They just kind of were like fans of that particular theater or whatever. And thankfully, for the majority, everybody loved the movie. So that was the good thing about it. It's just there weren't enough people showing up to really, build any momentum from it. That's the problem. I mean, last night I went to see the new Kevin Costner movie, Horizon, and it was me and 2 other people in the theater. And now today we heard the news, and this is Hollywood level now, that the second part of that series is going to be bumped, and the third and fourth parts are a big question mark. Will they ever be made? Who knows? So I mean, that's the thing. If Hollywood can't make this work, what hope do we have as the little people in the food chain?
Yeah. You're right. And I think it's definitely, I mean, the thing that I think gets me is that you've heard for so long that the theater experience or whatever it is really wearing on people, and people aren't going out anymore to the theaters because they're waiting for streaming and this and that. And I understand that is a big part of it. But also, as a filmmaker who also goes to the movies and enjoys that theater experience, to me, when I'm thinking about going to see a movie, it has to be something major. It has to be something big, like a big Marvel movie, or like I went to see the Kevin Costner movie, something big that I wanted to see on a big screen, because 9 times out of 10, I'm sitting there watching a movie and I'm having to try and watch a movie while I've got the glare of people's cell phones that are in front of me as they're playing games or sending texts or hearing people talking or answering calls or whatever it is outside. I remember back in the day, there used to be ushers that used to sit there and wait, look and see if there was anybody and tell them to put your phone away or tell them to leave the theater to make it.
Or throw you out, yeah.
Nowadays, they don't care. So it's pretty much people are going there to get attention a lot of times, and it bothers me. And then forget about concessions. You go there with a date, you're going to spend $100 just on popcorn, hot dogs, and a Coke. It's just outrageous. So at that point, it's like it's got to be a major event for me to want to go to the theater, because it's cost prohibitive. And if I'm going to pay $15 to watch a movie, I'd like to see and hear the movie. I don't want to see somebody else talking or something like that. So those are, to me, the biggest reasons. But as far as like you talked about the Kevin Costner movie. I'm a huge Kevin Costner fan and an even bigger Western fan. So I went into that really expecting something special. But that movie was confusing at best. There were so many things going on. And I understand it was supposed to be a saga with so many different little, storylines in this and that. That's all well and good. But there were so many things that popped up that I was looking to the person I was with and we're like, did I miss something here? She's like, nope. So, I mean, even when we got done, we talked to a few people there and they were like, I don't know what I just saw. So I'm not quite sure.
I feel like he's playing the long game and he's establishing some. There was a lot of jumping around. I really liked the movie for what I saw, but I think there's a lot of stuff that obviously is yet to come. But now who knows if it's ever the second part is at least done, so we'll get that. But who knows if we'll ever get those third and fourth parts? That's the thing.
And I feel bad because I wanted to.
Costner's got some of his own money in the thing, so he's kind of an independent filmmaker, sort of. It's just being distributed by a studio. So.
Oh yeah, no, I'm wishing him well because I love Westerns overall. So I mean, I'm really hoping it does well, not just for him because I'm a fan of his, but I love Westerns overall. I don't think we have enough of them out there. So I'm really hoping that this will revive it. But that second part really needs to kind of bring things together. But I think the article that I read said that what they're trying to do is give the first one more time to get out there on video, let people see it, let people familiarize themselves with it before they dump the second part out there. So we'll see how it plays out.
Which makes sense, but my fear with that article was that they're relying on streaming to they're kind of dangling that carrot in front of us that, well, you got to watch it on streaming and then we'll bring out the second part in theaters, which I don't know. Maybe I'm very distrustful of studios when they start talking about that kind of stuff. So I don't know. But yeah, I mean, overall, I get everything you're saying about the theater. I've sort of rediscovered the theatrical experience in recent years. I've for years have taken my kids to the Marvel movies and the DC movies and all that kind of stuff. But now I've kind of branched off and I'll go just see almost anything in the theater just to have that experience again. That was the thing when I was a kid growing up. There were no cell phones and there weren't, if you wanted to see something, you either saw it in the theater or you waited for it to come on network TV, and that was it. Or, the drive-in maybe, but those were your choices. Now we have obviously a few more choices as far as where you're going to see and what you're going to see. And that's a big problem too, is there's just too many movies. I mean, that's really, the technology's kind of finally come to the point where I would have loved to see it in the 90s when I was making shot on video movies, where it's really good. It's actually good enough that you can make a movie on an iPhone and you can, go out and do things very inexpensively. But then what happens is then everybody's doing the same thing. So, I mean, that kind of was always the way, but when you shot on film, certainly in the 35 millimeter days, that was an expensive proposition. Even 16 millimeter was expensive. You have lab costs and all these secondary things you have to deal with. So, that's the difference, I guess, between then and now. So, but I get what you're saying. I think in my area of Ohio, the audiences are a little bit more respectful. I don't see as many people on their cell phones. I love part of the road show that we did. We had a Dead Next Door screening at an Alamo Drafthouse in Austin, Texas. That was my first Alamo Drafthouse experience. And they are very hardcore. Like, they tell you right up front, if you have your cell phone out, we're going to kick you out and you're not going to get a refund. So, the audience was like right there and into the movie and that's it. They were there for that purpose. They weren't there to, they shut the phones off and that's it. So.
Yeah. And let me know if you think this is an issue too. It's like with the fact that streaming is so popular now and there are so many streaming services, to me, I would think that if you delayed the movies hitting the streaming services a little more right now, when you see a movie and it's going to come on the theaters, you're thinking, okay, well, I don't really want to go through all that expense or that trouble. And next month it'll be available on Netflix or whatever it is. If you made them wait 2 or 3 months or something like that before something hits the streaming services, that might push people to go see the movies now because they don't want to wait that 3 or 4 months, rather than wait just a couple weeks. And sometimes they're coming out on streaming at the same time during the theater.
Yeah, I mean, The Fall Guy was the most recent legendary one. I mean, it was 2 weeks in the theater and then boom, it was on video on demand, and that's just insane. I mean, that was part of when I came up with this harebrained scheme to take Side Effects May Vary on the road. Was part of that was the incentive was to, because we started at the end of January of this year, and now tomorrow in Schenectady, New York, we'll have the last roadshow screening finally. So in between, there's been 35 screenings over the course of 5 months. And that was kind of the whole idea, is to just withhold the movies from streaming. You can't see it that way. You got to come out to the theater if you really want to see. And the people who really wanted to see it. Those diehards, God bless them, they actually came out in good enough numbers that it made sense to do it. You know, it wasn't, we had a few sellout crowds, but we never had huge crowds. You know, in a couple of cities I had very small crowds, but that was okay. You know, it was all part of the experience of people. So it told me that people do still want to have that experience. They do still want to see things on the big screen. So that was heartening to see. It's just, I wish there was a few more people that came out to see it.
I hear you.
Maybe next time, if there is a next time, who knows?
Right. Well,
but there will be recorded in the fall. We'll have it on streaming, and then everybody else can kind of pick it up that didn't get to see it that way. So
excellent. Well, while we're on that subject, like I was telling you off the air a little while ago, we have a lot of filmmakers that watch this program. So I like to try and make sure that I get as much information out there for these filmmakers that have their films coming out. So with you, since you've been in the business as long as you have, what would you recommend to that indie horror filmmaker that wants to put a movie together? What should his game plan be when putting that movie together? Not just getting the movie done and the financing, but where to go after it's finished.
Well, I'm joking, of course, but I would tell them not to do it at all. I would say take your money and put it in a nice IRA somewhere, or make an investment in Apple or some other solid corporation. I mean, you know, that's the thing. This is not. We used to have what was called the film business. This is not the film business anymore. This is something else. This is the film. It's not quite a hobby, because some of us are making money with it, you know, and a lot of people are making money at it, but it's not quite the film business like it used to be. You know, you don't have home video and all that stuff to go to. I mean, but the beauty of that on the flip side too is that you have more control over the situation. You don't necessarily need a distributor. You don't necessarily need to give somebody your movie. If you're willing to take the plunge, you can get the discs made yourself. You can go to conventions and other things where you can just kind of network directly with the fans. And I mean, I know that those situations have always existed. You know, we've all gone to conventions and done this kind of stuff, but that's really I almost want to tell people, don't sign your movie with a distributor unless they're going to throw a bunch of stupid money at you. And then you should take that stupid money and run, you know, and put it in the bank and don't make another one. I'm joking. But you know, that's it. I think we're at that point where the distributor is really, I mean, unless we're talking about streaming, because then, you know, I know there's places like Film Hub that you can get your movies out that way, and I've used them, and there's pluses and minuses with them too. But you know, the physical media distributor is really not as important as it used to be. I mean, you can do it yourself. You can just make the discs and sell, and go directly to places like Diabolic DVD or MakeFlix or other places and just sell them wholesale that way. You know, I mean, that's the thing. That's the beauty of it. The problem really is that there's just, I years ago, and this speaks directly to indie filmmakers. I mean, I was always of the theory that a lot of the people who were fans of my movies were actually people who wanted to make movies. Now, this has been going on for generations. I was a fan of George Romero and John Carpenter and all these, you know, but I also wanted to make movies too. And now you have a whole, you know, several other generations of people growing up since that are making movies that are less interested in seeing what everybody else is doing and more interested in just making their movies, which is great. I mean, that the fact that you can do that at all in this day and age is fantastic, but it also makes it very hard to have a career, if I keep talking in air quotes, but to have a career where you're making one movie after another makes it very difficult, because if you can't connect with that audience, then, you know, you're gonna have a problem. You might get lucky once, but you might have a problem selling the next one. So I don't know if I gave good advice there, but at least, you know, the don't sign with a distributor is probably the best advice that I can give somebody in this day and age. It's not worth it unless they want to throw a bunch of money at you.
Right. Betty Genesis here says, I love the roadshow screening. It's like traveling theater troops.
That was the idea. Yeah. That was the whole, we even went to the trouble. I wish I had one close to me that I could show you. We had made these little pandemic face masks with the poster art printed on them, and gave them away like the old, you know, like they used to do with Mark of the Devil with the barf bags at the drive-in and all that stuff. And we really tried to go all out and make a whole thing out of it. So
yeah, I actually went to a road show many years ago with Charlie Band. I drove him on, and we did one for him there, and it was like a big event. I mean, they had everything decorated and stuff. They had prizes, they had giveaways, they had special guests. So it was like a real big event and stuff. So it was really cool. So I love that experience. That's absolutely great.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that doing that kind of stuff to connect with an audience, I think the audience, first of all, appreciates it and will, especially if they like the movie, which helps too. They'll follow what you're doing, and and it will pay off in the long run. It may not be a short-term gain. I mean, we had a merch table and we were selling stuff. That was great too, but really all that did was just kind of cover the costs of going from city to city and doing this stuff.
Yeah, and like you said,
it's not financially lucrative to do a theatrical distribution in this day and age, but it has benefits too.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there's nothing like going to these different events. I mean, setting up a table, having your merch there, shaking people's hands, talking indie films, meeting the fans. There's nothing like that. I mean, you make your sales here and there, which is all great. But then again, I mean, at the end of the day, is it cost effective? Because a lot of these places, you're going to have to pay for a table, you're going to have to pay for a hotel, you got travel up there, all the setup time and stuff, and you're going to have to try and recoup that, in those sales, which a lot of times isn't going to happen. But the meeting people and the shaking of the hands and seeing all these people that you didn't know that were following you on Facebook and your podcast, so that's wonderful. It's great. I love that part. It's just
it's a bit like a presidential campaign on a budget. You got to go around and shake the babies and the hands. Or I mean, shake the hands.
The babies.
Babies. I was going to say kiss the hands and shake the babies. But,
exactly, yes.
But yeah, I mean, it very much is that kind of, if you're in that spirit of doing it, that's what people love about it is making that personal connection, which is great in the era of social media to be able to do that and to see so many people come out. People were coming with their once I thought I was wrong, but I was mistaken hats that we sold on MakeFlix and stuff, and their T-shirts and stuff. It's great to see that, to actually put your eyes on somebody that you maybe have corresponded with through social media or whatever. That was really the plus of it for me, as well as to share, of course, share a new movie with an audience.
All right. So now for the people that are watching us right now that are not familiar with MakeFlix, tell us a little bit about that. How did it get started? What exactly services does it offer for people, and how do they get in touch with you and find out about getting involved?
I tried to, when I designed it, the idea was to treat it as sort of a hub of a distribution wheel with all the filmmakers being the spokes. That was kind of my grandiose vision for it. That hasn't entirely panned out, but I deal with a lot of filmmakers and they all shapes and sizes. There's guys who have one movie, and then I have partnered with people like Fred Olin Ray, who's been around forever, who's had his retro media label. And he was having trouble with Amazon. He would ship them box cases of discs, and they would sit on them for months before they would list them. And I saw his frustration on social media, so I reached out to him and said, "Hey, why don't you let me try and sell this stuff on MakeFlix?" And it turned out to be a great marriage. I mean, I've known Fred for years, so he trusted that I was going to do the right thing. But we wound up very quickly selling, a lot of discs because of that. And it, even though maybe I'm not quite on the Amazon level for him yet, it's a nice secondary income, and I'm trying to always siphon as many of those Amazon customers away as I can and get them to go to MakeFlix. But yeah, so I mean, I deal with a lot of different filmmakers. I pay everybody. It's generally a consignment deal. They send me a small amount of discs, and then I pay them via PayPal or Zelle or however as they sell, and everybody gets paid, and it's a beautiful thing, So that's always an option for people that are looking for one more place to sell the stuff that gets it in front of an audience. Build up a customer base of I don't know, 8,000 or 10,000 customers probably at this point that are looking for this kind of stuff. Now, that said, a lot of collectors nowadays are not looking for new movies, so they have to be sort of convinced into buying new movies. They're very quick to buy something like Fred's Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, but they might be less apt to buy a Side Effects May Vary or something of that nature. So you have to kind of, there is a certain amount of promotion that goes on there to try and convince them to take a chance on something new. That's the thing.
Okay.
But yeah, MakeFlix is becoming, it's grown, it's certainly through the pandemic, which is when I had launched it right around that time, or right a little before that. It was very lucrative because people were stuck at home and, didn't know, didn't have anything to watch. They got sick of watching the same stuff over and over again. So our business did very, very well at that time. And it's still growing, by leaps and bounds, a little bit at a time. So.
Okay. Now, also, are you a big fan of people like independent filmmakers that put together their DVDs and or Blu-rays and load them with extras? Do you think that's a viable selling point, or do you think that's pretty much a waste of time for the most part?
I was sort of, a lot of people said that I sort of helped trailblaze that thing back in the DVD days, because a lot of the discs that I did, both for my stuff and for Full Moon stuff, we would just load them with stuff. I've kind of a little bit less, especially for a new movie. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. For an older movie or something that you're reissuing, yes, because people want that sort of retrospective look at it. For a new movie, I don't think it's as necessary to do that. I mean, you could maybe do bloopers or deleted scenes, things like that are usually interesting, but I wouldn't go overboard with a lot of interviews and all that kind of stuff. A good commentary track will tell everybody anything that they need to know about your movie, you know, in the background of why you made it and how you made it and all that stuff. But, you know, I mean, people do it. It's just, I've just done it for so long that these days I tend to put a little bit less. I mean, the Blu-rays that I've done for the older titles, yes, we still load those up. For the newer stuff, not as much, just because it doesn't seem to need it. You know, if somebody's either going to buy it or they're not, and you know they're buying it for the movie. And I know for me personally, I just don't have time to watch all those extras anymore. You know, I used to love back in the Laserdisc days. Now I'm really dating myself, but you would have a commentary track, and that was the thing. You'd watch the movie, and then you'd watch it again with the commentary track, and just absorb the whole thing. And nowadays, I'm lucky. Sometimes I'll buy a disc, and maybe I'll watch it once with the commentary track on. You know, if it's a movie that I've seen over and over again, or something that that is already familiar to me. But I'm lucky to. You know, there's just not enough time in the day to watch all that stuff. I'm not a young man anymore, Rick.
I understand, but that makes perfect sense. Like
more income,
right? But that makes perfect sense. What you were just saying. It's for the newer movies, just putting them out there pretty much bare bones, maybe with a commentary track, and that's it. And then as that fan base grows, if that fan base does grow for that film, then you put out a special edition later on that adds deleted scenes, interviews, or things like that, or whatever. Because then people will be used to it and want that kind of stuff because they've seen the original. So that, to me, that makes a lot of sense.
I think one good thing about today is I think if you can put something out, I hesitate to use the word streaming first because it sounds so. But if you put it out on streaming and you do build an audience, then you can have the sort of justification to go back and put it on a physical media where you can load it up with all that stuff. So if somebody discovered a movie on Tubi, let's say, and really liked it and made a note of it, and then they see, oh my gosh, there's a disc available, and it's got these interviews and it's got all this extra, then you're kind of like you've already secured that that viewer because they liked it when they saw it for free, essentially. You know, they watched the ads, of course, but and then maybe you can sell them a disc later on. So that's an option. I don't know, I haven't done that yet necessarily, that approach, but that's one way that you could possibly possibly do it in this day and age.
Interesting. Now, I have a question for you, for me, myself. I'm a big fan of physical media. I've got 3,000 plus DVDs out in my living room and every place else in this house. So I love having physical media. Believe me, I like having it on streaming because I usually, when I go buy a DVD, I'll make sure to get it in Blu-ray instead. That's got the digital code, so I can just whip it in my phone and put it up that way. That's fine. But if ever you don't have a connection, or if ever I'm somewhere where I don't have it, I like having my physical copy. With that said, there's been a lot of rumblings lately that they're talking about, physical media is going to be going away. There was a big article I read the other day that Sony's no longer going to be producing writable Blu-rays and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that? Do you really feel that physical media will end up going away? Because I heard that about vinyl, and then I heard just the year before, vinyl outsold CDs, so they came back. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you feel that physical media is going away? And if so, how is that going to affect the indie filmmaker?
Well, I mean, physical media has already gone away to a large degree, in that there's, good luck walking into a retail store and buying a copy of almost anything nowadays. I mean, Target still has a little tiny section of Disney movies and other studio movies. But as far as, the days of, and that was the thing too, when I came into Side Effects May Vary, I sort of was like, there's no Netflix DVD, there's no Tower Records, there's no Best Buy is not selling DVD, Blu-rays, there's no Family Video, there's no Blockbuster, there's no Hollywood. None of that stuff exists anymore. So where do you sell a new movie? Well, physical media, I think, will always have a place with collectors. And as the vinyl resurgence has taught us, the people who want to have that thing and have it with the artwork and the whole, they're always going to be there. And I think that there will always be an audience or a distribution network to cater to them. A lot of it is going towards manufactured on demand. You're going to see less replicated discs, where they're burned from a glass master, and you're going to see more of the burned, manufactured on demand, which is what I do a lot of at MakeFlix, just because then you don't have to press 1,000 discs and worry about, am I going to sell 1,000 discs in any amount of time? So, but I think the physical media, it's just going to get more and more narrow focused on the collectors that want it, and less towards, it's so funny because, we used to have the days where DVD was so prevalent that just, I remember my stepmother, when I would go to a store with her, she was the type that would just start rooting around through the DVDs and go, oh, this looks good. This looks good. Let's buy 2 or 3 DVDs and take them home and we'll watch them. And that was how she did her. She had no idea what she was buying. She just was buying because it was an impulse thing, just like, oh, this sounds like fun. Let's do that. And I think a lot of us are more focused on, I certainly in my case, I'm, like The Hitcher just got announced from Second Sight Films in a beautiful 4K restaurant. I couldn't hit the buy now button fast enough on a title like that. I'm not, I'm not the type of person that's going to just go, oh, well, this looks good, let's buy this. It's just not my cup of tea. But I think we'll still see. I think there will always be a collector's market. It's just, and I think we're really, the death of physical media is greatly exaggerated because we're already pretty much there where it's just a collector. I mean, the stuff is literally just being made for collectors, whether it's Kino Lorber or Shout Factory or Vinegar Syndrome. I mean, that's all they're catering to. There's no no retail distribution of any kind. They're not selling to the people like my stepmother where it's an impulse buy. They're selling to us, you and me, Rick.
That's true. That's true. But once again, like we talked about before, when I go to those different, like we just went to Tampa Bay Screams a couple weeks ago, and we set up our table, it's imperative for you to have those DVDs out there, the T-shirts out there. That's where you sell a lot of that merch. And I saw so many other tables that had that. And I'm wondering if maybe the fact that it's getting out of the Walmarts and getting out of the Targets and stuff, that might say something good for those mom and pop shops. Like I've got my friend Shelby McIntyre, who owns a place called Viper Video in Tampa. And you've got Dark Delicacies and stuff like that. You've got Nightmare Toys in Vegas. So I'm hoping that maybe that offers them much, much more, because you're going to have to go to places like that to get those movies that you won't be able to find anyplace else anymore.
Well, that's it. And I think you're going to see, as the corporations fail us, which they ultimately always do, you will see, I think, a lot of the rise of a lot of more independent grassroots stores like that. I think that will come back where it, to cater specifically to the physical media crowd. I love that Vinegar Syndrome, one of the great things that they do is they have 3 retail stores. They have one in Connecticut where they're based, one in, I think, Toronto, somewhere in Canada, and one in Denver, Colorado, or outside of Denver, Colorado, which I recently was there in their Denver store, the Archive. And it's exactly what you think it is. It's not just Vinegar Syndrome. They sell everybody's stuff. They now have a little Tempe section. They got a whole, they sell anything they can get their hands on. They sell it, and they have, that audience. They had customers that were coming in. I did a signing there that were literally like the gal who manages the shop was telling me, this guy comes in every day and buys something, and then he comes in the next day and talks about it with us and then buys something else. And it's like literally 7 days a week this guy was coming in buying a disc. So I mean, those are the people, God bless them, that are going to keep that thing going.
Yeah, and kind of like what you were just mentioning, that little comment that I put up here about from Robert Finborg about plot is important, story line doesn't necessarily have to fall into place as to follow. This kind of touches on what you were mentioning about how, when I think you said your mom was going around rooting through the bins, a lot of times when she's picking up those DVDs, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, she's never heard of that movie, doesn't know anything about that movie, but that awesome cover art, that AI cover art or whatever it is, will sell it. And then you get home and find out that it doesn't look anything like that AI cover art. But at the end of the day, you spent that money, so they did what they had to do.
I can't tell you how many people have come up to me at shows, and including the Roadshow, where they were like, oh my gosh, I remember as a kid seeing the Dead Next Door artwork on the shelf, the zombie with the muzzle on his face and all that. And that, you don't think about it at the time that's going to actually have an impact on people, but yeah, it does. I mean, people remember that stuff, and that sticks with them, and then they see the movie, and it lives up to what their expectations of it were, and then they just carry it forward through their lives. So, the right piece of artwork definitely makes a difference.
Absolutely. So let me ask you then, you said you've been out of this for about 20 years, and then finally Side Effects brought you back. What caused you to decide to walk away, and then what was the reasoning behind you wanting to jump back on the saddle?
I think a lot of it was I had worked for Full Moon for 5 years. I had started just doing post-production for them, and then I wound up directing and then producing a line of shot on DV cam movies for them. And sort of towards the tail end of it, it was kind of becoming like, it was really just a job. I was making movies that I didn't necessarily want to make and didn't feel inspired about per se. So that was the main reason that I stepped away from it. Like I said, I didn't really intend for it to be 20 years, but then I reached a point maybe after the 8th or 9th or 10th year where people would ask me, and I'm like, yeah, no, I think I'm done. No, I don't think I'm going to do it again. Because at that point, you're far enough away from it that, I had been making stuff very steadily prior to that, and then it gets harder to do it. Why did I step back into it now? Actually, it's sort of indirectly Charlie Band's fault. Going back to because he wrote his autobiography, I think came out last year, The Confessions of a Puppet Master, and I was listening to the audiobook version of it because he's talking about all the great Empire days and all these, how he did all this stuff. And at one point he was saying that, if you stop making movies, you die. And I thought, well, geez, I guess I'm already dead then. I'm not, I've always been involved in distribution, and I've done post-production. I've cut hundreds of trailers for other companies and, keeping busy doing stuff, but, it was not actually making anything. So that got me, that quote got me to thinking about it again. And then I've had James Edwards, who had started with me years ago. He was only 12 years old as a production assistant on The Dead Next Door. He's since gone on to make his own features. Now he started with a movie called Her Name Was Krista, which, if you haven't seen it, is excellent. I recommend it to everyone. And that he we would go to lunch frequently, and he would constantly be bugging me about, don't you want to do it again? Don't you want to make something? And I'd be like, no, thank you. It just countless. And I think he just, between him and that Charlie Band quote, it's just sort of eventually wore me down. And I thought, well, maybe this would be fun to do again, because a lot of things in my life have changed. Over the last 20 years, I got remarried and have a couple kids, and they, my wife and kids never experienced this. They were around, when I was restoring the old movies, and, sort of peripherally involved or doing screenings or that kind of stuff, but they never actually experienced what is it like to make a movie. So I thought, well, that might be fun. So maybe we'll do something. So that's where we sort of came up with Side Effects May Vary, and tried to do something small and contained and not too overly ambitious. I had a comedy script that James and Matthew Jason Walsh had written for me years ago called Old Wives' Tales that I really want to make, but it was a little too ambitious for the money that I was willing to spend. So we just sort of created this thing, and it really came about because of my obsessive love for a movie from the 70s called The Incredible Melting Man, which was really inspired this. And I told James, I said, well, let's not do that comedy. Let's make this. I want to make my own riff on that movie. So he saw eye to eye with me, and we kind of came up with the story together. And then he was off to the races, wrote it very, a couple of weeks, and then we were off. And before we knew it, we were on the set shooting it. So.
Nice. So is this just a one-time shot, or do you think that you're back now and you might continue on?
That is the one question that I have consistently got at all 35 screenings that I've gone to. Everybody always asks that question, what's next? And I'm always like pulling my hair out going, well, I'm still, this movie's done, but it's not out. It's not, right. I've given birth to it, but it hasn't graduated yet. It hasn't gone out into the world yet. So, we'll see. A lot of it does depend on how this movie does. If this just completely like crashes and burns, then I would be less interested in making something. Well, I should point out that I really probably will take a big step away from independent horror for a little bit, because I feel like I kind of want to stretch my wings now as a almost 58-year-old man. I don't have a lot of time or a lot of movies left, so I kind of want to try something else. And Side Effects, to a large degree, and I guess you've seen the movie, but it's very much a comedy in the shell of a sci-fi horror movie. I mean, there's a lot of intentional humor in it, So that has inspired me to sort of try something different. And it would be kind of nice to show up on a set where somebody wasn't flinging a lot of blood, and there weren't those kind of things going on. So that's the challenge now, is to see if I can make something that maybe is a little more watchable to my family.
Very cool. Very interesting. All right. So where I know you said that it's going through the roadshow process right now. Is there another roadshow coming up where people can see this movie?
Yeah, tomorrow night, which is Thursday, July 11th, in Schenectady, New York, at the GE Theater at Proctor's. That is our last roadshow screening. The last one was actually supposed to be a couple weeks ago. I went to a Weekend of Fear in Germany, and that was originally scheduled to be the last one. And then the programmer at Proctor's was enamored enough with the movie that he talked me into adding one more date on. So we have that, and then it's we have a Kickstarter going on right now for about a week and a half. I think it ends on July 19th, where you can actually pre-order it on Blu-ray or DVD. And there's also a bunch of cool add-ons. We have a VHS edition available. We have syringe pens and all the stickers and all this, these little tchotchkes as well. So that's going on. And then straight from Schenectady, I'm actually going to in Eastern Pennsylvania. There's a VHS Fest they do every year, where they're actually screening Robot Ninja this year. It's not necessarily side effects related, but a lot of I went to that show about 5 years ago when they screened Ozone. It's kind of neat to see it. It's at a drive-in, so you get to see your movie projected on a drive-in screen, which is kind of a cool experience. Yeah.
I grew up with drive-ins. There's just not enough of them around anymore.
No, that's the thing. Yeah. So any chance I can get to go do something like that, I'm absolutely all for it. So looking forward to that. So that'll be a big weekend. Yeah. But Schenectady, if you're anywhere near Schenectady, New York, upstate Eastern New York, then that's the place to be tomorrow night.
Cool. One thing you did mention here that I definitely wanted to ask you about, VHS. I mean, that just seems to be like a really cool thing that people love that, and some people freak out. They're only looking for the VHS, but it's almost like, I don't know what the terminology I wanted to use basically, but it's like, I guess is it cost effective to do that? Because I mean, I made a couple VHSs for my Nightmare Collection Volume 2, and they look great. They look cool, and I'm sure they'll play fine. But it's just, it costs so much more to make those than it does a VHS, than it does a DVD or a Blu-ray. Is that something you think warrants, people to look at when they make their movies, or is just not cost effective enough to do it?
No, I think the hardest part is obviously buying the blank tapes and the cases and all that. It's not as easy as it used to be because, nobody's really doing it anymore. There's good luck finding a place to do mass market VHS, tapes in bulk. I mean, there are places that will do it, but you're going to pay for it, like you said. But yeah, I think in limited runs, I mean, if your expectations are in check, I think if you run 25, 30, 50 VHS tapes, I think you'll find that people are actually interested in it, and that's such a niche crowd that they're willing to pay $30, $40 for a VHS because it looks cool on the shelf. So they're more than happy to, if it's something they want, they will buy it. Just like all of us collectors, if it's something we really want, we'll take that plunge.
Absolutely. Excellent. Okay. All right. Now, as we're winding down here real quick, is there anything else that you want to make sure you let people know about? Anything as far as anything upcoming that they can expect, or for the people that are interested in possibly sending you their films for MakeFlix? How can they reach you? How can they find you?
I'm pretty easy to find. There's a MakeFlix page on Facebook, and there's an Instagram account, MakeFlix Movies. I'm personally very easy to find online. You can definitely message me if you've got a movie. The first thing I'll of course probably ask you is if do you have packaged discs, because that's what it's not a distribution deal. I'm looking for people that just have products sitting on the shelf, or they are making through services like Junkie, and that are looking for a place to sell it. I'll be happy to. At this point, it's really selling these kind of movies is a little bit like throwing spaghetti on the wall, because you don't know what's going to stick. Sometimes there's happy surprises where I have a title where maybe the packaging's not so great, the trailer's so, but I'll throw it on the site, and to my surprise, it sells. So that's just it. You just never know. So it's, the old adage is, of course, you want a good trailer and good artwork because that's what sells. Well, that's not always the case. If something seems high concept or cool enough, people will take a chance on it. Of course, I always tell people, have a good trailer, have good artwork, because then you've got your best foot forward. But yeah, I've been surprised with sometimes people just are willing to take a chance on stuff anyways. So, but yeah, I mean, if somebody's looking at doing it, I encourage you. It's, as a filmmaker, it's far more rewarding than the frustration of trying to find a distributor, or certainly far more than finding a distributor who's going to ultimately just screw you and or ruin your movie, or your chances for success. So I definitely encourage people to at least try it. It's not for everybody. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of, like, you got to be a huckster. You got to get out there and promote the thing and constantly be in people's faces with it. But that's part of the business. That's just what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on here and enlightening us all with all this information. I really enjoyed your film. I enjoyed several of your films prior to, and love what you're doing. And I hope we can definitely steer some people in your direction with MakeFlix. And I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Well, me too. We'll see. Get through this, and then we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. All right. Well, if you don't mind, just hang on for another minute or two. What I'm going to do is close out the show and send it off. And once I do that, I'll come back and we can talk off air. Okay?
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you again for popping in.
Thanks everybody for watching.
All right, everybody. There you go. I ran the show solo. I think I got through fairly unscathed. Once again, thank you so much for Jared coming on board. He's been somebody that I've known for many, many years, followed his processes, seen his movies, worked with some of the people he's worked with, and he's just always been that class act, and he always responds when you reach out to him. So if you see him on Facebook, definitely drop him a line. If you've got a film that's finished that you would like to see about possibly getting it out there and having MakeFlix help you get that out there and sell those products, definitely reach out to him. You can find him on Facebook and other social media as well. So definitely look him up, J.R. Bookwalter, and look up MakeFlix as well. Next week, we have Tony Morris. That's going to be on with us. He's a friend of mine from here. He has recently moved overseas, but he just made a feature film called Deer Camp 86 that I had the pleasure of going out there and meeting his partner Damien and seeing it on the big screen. And I believe it just came out on Blu-ray now. I just saw somebody that posted a video saying that it was actually on the shelf at Walmart or Target. So there you go. Deer Camp 86. We'll chat with him, see how that process was, and get some behind the scenes information on him as far as his filmmaking venture with that, what he's got coming up next, and more. So tune in with us next week for Tony Morris. And once again, thank you so much for joining us here on the Indie Horror Junkie podcast, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Now, I've just got to find out where to go to end the show, which I believe is right here. See you guys next week.